A forbidden confession. Some stories are whispered through the cracks of perfect homes, where secrets lie in the shadows of love and lust. Welcome to Voices and Visions, where truth shatters innocence and desire dances, dangerously close to betrayal. This is not just a story, it's a confession. Chapter 1. The night it happened. I never thought a night of thunder and wine would leave me standing in front of the mirror, clutching a white stick that held a plus sign like a curse. Pregnant. The word made my knees weak. I'm Natalie, 27, married to Jacob for 3 years. We have the perfect life, at least from the outside. But behind that white picket faucet is a man who works too late, kisses too quickly, and touches me like a duty rather than a desire. Then came his father, Richard. Jacob's dad moved in after a fall that left him with a broken leg and a bitterness that clung like smoke. A man in his early 50s, salt and pepper hair, piercing eyes that stripped the layers off me more than they should have. I tried to ignore the tension until that stormy night. Jacob was away on a business trip, and the power went out. I was wearing a silk robe, barely decent, and Richard was downstairs trying to light candles. "I can't see a damn thing," he muttered. "I'll help," I said, more to myself than to him. The air felt heavier as I came closer. The flickering light caught the lines of his face, aged, masculine, unreadable. "Your robe's open," he said, his voice low. I looked down. The silk had parted just enough. "I didn't realize," I whispered, suddenly breathless. "I did. It was wrong. I should have left." Instead, I stood still. He stepped closer. "Do you want me to stop?" I couldn't speak. My body betrayed me. One kiss, deep, commanding. One touch, and the robe was gone. I didn't resist. I wanted needed to feel wanted. Not out of duty, but desire. Pure aching need. That night, I let my husband's father claim a part of me no one ever had. Now I'm pregnant, and I don't know whose baby it is. Chapter 2. Traces in the dark. I woke up the next morning with guilt soaked into my skin, like the scent of his cologne that still lingered on my sheets. Richard was already gone from my bed. No note, no glance, no apology. Just silence, the kind that follows a mistake too big to name. The guilt hit harder when Jacob returned that night, kissing my cheek like nothing had changed. Maybe to him, nothing had, but inside me, everything had. "I missed you," he murmured as he slid into bed, his hand brushing my hip. I stiffened instinctively. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm just tired." He didn't press. He never did. Jacob had become a man of convenience, gentle, safe, predictable. I once loved that. But after Richard's touch, Jacob felt like warm water compared to fire. Days passed, then weeks, and then nausea. At first, I told myself it was stress. But when I missed my period, panic set in like a slow burn. The test confirmed it. I stood in our bathroom, watching my reflection as if it might confess whose child grew inside me. Richard or Jacob? I couldn't even remember if Jacob and I had been intimate around that time. It all blurred together, his absence, our cold touches, and that one night of heat I could never forget. Dinner became unbearable. Richard sat at the head of the table, eyes meeting mine far too long. I could feel it in every glance. He knew, or suspected, or didn't care. "Everything all right, Natalie?" he asked, sipping his wine. I choked slightly. "Yes." Jacob chuckled. "She's been acting strange lately. Maybe she's pregnant." The room froze. Richard's gaze snapped to mine, dark and unreadable. I could feel the flush creeping up my neck. "Wouldn't that be something?" Richard said slowly, curling his lip into a half smile. "A new little one in the house." Later that night, I passed him in the hallway. He leaned in. "Are you?" he whispered. "Is it mine?" My breath caught. I didn't answer. He smirked and walked away. He already knew. Chapter 3. The echo between us. I couldn't sleep anymore. Not with that question echoing in my head. Not with Richard's whisper wrapped around my ribs like a vice. "Is it mine?" I kept replaying that night in my mind, his hands, the pressure of his lips, the raw hunger that neither of us had tried to stop. The memory was seared into my skin. Every time Jacob touched me now, I flinched, not because I didn't love him, but because I couldn't pretend. I couldn't lie while my body held the evidence. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror and lifted my shirt. Just a small bump, barely there. But to me, It was a scream, a baby, a child I didn't plan, a life I couldn't explain. The next morning, Jacob was in the shower. I heard Richard in the kitchen. I should have avoided him. Instead, I walked in, heart hammering, barefoot and brave. He turned when he heard me. We stared at each other for too long. Does he know? He asked. No. You're going to tell him? I shook my head. How could I? Richard stepped closer. Because he's your husband. And He stopped. I'm not. But you might be the father. He nodded slowly. I know. We were inches apart now. I hated how my body still responded. My breath shallowed. My thighs clenched without permission. What happens now? I asked. He brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. I don't know, but I can't stop thinking about you. It was supposed to be one night. He lowered his voice. It was never going to be just one night. Then he kissed me again. Right there, in the kitchen, soft, hungry, dangerous. The kind of kiss that makes you forget your name, your vows, your sins. When I pulled away, trembling, I whispered, we can't keep doing this. He smirked. You're already mine, Natalie. Maybe you just haven't accepted it yet. Then he walked away again, leaving me breathless with guilt and craving more. Chapter 4. His eyes. His father's hands. I began studying Jacob's face like I was searching for a roadmap to my salvation. His eyes were soft, ocean blue, kind. Not like Richard's. His father's gaze was stormy, intense, sharp enough to cut skin without leaving blood. And when Richard looked at me now, I felt like he owned a piece of me, a piece I hadn't given willingly, but didn't fight to keep either. Jacob cooked me dinner that night. Pasta, wine, candles. He lit the room with soft jazz and said, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we tried for a baby. I dropped my fork. We haven't talked about it in a while. He continued, pouring more wine into my glass. But I'd love to see you pregnant, glowing, holding my child. I stared at the wine like it might swallow me whole. I hadn't told him. I couldn't. Not yet. Because what if it wasn't his? Richard walked in just in wrong timing. Or maybe fate's sixth sense of humor. He froze, then took in the romantic setting and my frozen expression. Jacob grinned at him. Dad, we've got good news. No. I blurted out too fast. It's nothing yet. Richard's eyes narrowed. Is that so? Later, I escaped to the bathroom, locking the door as nausea overwhelmed me. Not from the pregnancy but the pressure. I looked down at my belly, whispering to it like a prayer. Who do you belong to? Then I felt Richard outside the door. I opened it, and he was there. Don't tell him, he said, low. Not yet. Why? I asked. He reached out, placing his hand gently over my belly. I should have pushed him away, but I didn't, because I need to know if this baby changes anything between us. What do you mean? He leaned in, lips brushing my ear. Would you still want me if it's mine? I couldn't answer. My silence was louder than a confession, and in that moment, I realized something more terrifying than the lie itself. A part of me already did. Chapter 5. The baby knows. I started waking up to whispers. Not words, not voices, just whispers, inside me. As if the child growing in my womb already knew the storm outside my ribs. Every time Jacob touched my stomach, I flinched. Every time Richard looked at me, I burned. I was drowning in two tides, one of comfort, one of chaos. And in the mirror, I saw a woman who once believed in loyalty but now bathed in deception. You're glowing, Jacob said one morning, kissing my shoulder. I smiled hollow. It's the hormones. He laughed, pulling me into him. Maybe it's love. But whose? That same day, I had my first ultrasound. Jacob was late. Richard offered to take me. I should have said no, but I didn't want to go alone. We sat in silence during the drive, but the silence was thick, electric. In the small, dim room, the screen lit up. A heartbeat, a flickering light. I turned my head away to cry quietly. Richard stood beside me, silent for a moment. Then he took my hand. His thumb brushed my knuckles, grounding me in the most confusing way. It's real, I whispered. Yes, he said, eyes fixed on the screen. And it might be mine. We locked eyes, and in that second, everything shifted. Because for the first time, I saw something in him I didn't expect. Hope. Not lust. Not control. Hope. After the appointment, in the parking lot, he kissed me again. Softly this time. Not hungry, just human. I'll do whatever you need me to do, he whispered. Even if it means stepping away. Tears stung my eyes. But if it's mine, I want to know my child. Even if I can't have you. That night, Jacob touched me in bed tenderly. You felt different lately, he murmured. I didn't respond. Instead, I whispered a truth I didn't expect to say aloud. I think I'm scared of what this baby will change. He smiled into my hair. It's going to make us stronger. I closed my eyes because I wasn't sure we'd survive it at all. Chapter 6. Bloodlines and Secrets. I started counting days like sins. 1 day since the scan. 2 days since Richard kissed me. 3 days since I almost told Jacob the truth. And still, the baby grew. It was now visible, the bump beneath my clothes, the fullness of my breasts, the way strangers smiled at me in grocery stores. A glowing mother-to-be. They had no idea. Neither did Jacob. He held my hand during prenatal appointments now. He kissed my stomach before bed. He picked out names, innocent and eager. But Richard? He watched from the shadows. We had barely spoken since the clinic. Until that night. Jacob had gone out with friends. I was alone in the kitchen, making tea when I felt a presence behind me. Richard. His breath ghosted over my neck. How far along are you now? 14 weeks, I said, heart racing. He slid closer. You're showing. Don't. I just want to feel. He reached for my stomach and I let him. His hand was large, warm, reverent. I think about that night every damn day, he whispered. And now you're carrying a piece of it. Or a piece of Jacob. His hand curled around my waist. But what if it's mine? The kettle whistled. But I didn't move. You should have told him, Richard said. I'm terrified. Of losing him? I nodded. And what about me? I turned, our faces inches apart. I never wanted this, I whispered. But you wanted me. Silence. He kissed me again. Deep. Desperate. Like a man clinging to a shipwreck. We didn't go further. Not that night. But it wasn't innocence that stopped us. It was the fear that one more step would tip us over the edge forever. When Jacob returned home, he kissed me like everything was perfect. And for a moment, I pretended it was. But that night, as I lay between the man I married and the child I might have conceived with someone else, I heard a whisper in the dark. A voice I didn't recognize, soft and unborn. I know whose I am. Chapter 7. Between Two Fires. Desire is a strange thing. It doesn't follow rules. It doesn't care about vows, bloodlines, or beds. It burns. And when you stand between two fires long enough, your skin begins to forget what cold ever felt like. Jacob planned a weekend getaway. He said we needed time, just us. Away from stress, away from family. I agreed, half hoping the distance would melt the guilt. But the moment we arrived at the cabin, snow falling like ash outside, I felt it wrongness humming beneath the peace. Because I had packed a lie in my suitcase. A baby neither of us had named yet. That night, we sat by the fire, drinking hot cider. Jacob pulled me onto his lap, kissing the top of my head. You've been so strong, he said, carrying our future. I nodded, swallowing glass. He cupped my face. I want you. I let him. I closed my eyes and tried to let it be about him, about us. His hands were gentle, practiced, but every touch, every thrust, was haunted by another. Richard. I felt him like a ghost behind me, watching, claiming pieces Jacob couldn't touch anymore. The guilt should have stopped me, but pleasure has its own memory, and mine was soaked in both men. Afterward, Jacob fell asleep with his hand resting on my belly. I cried silently beside him, because I still didn't know who this child belonged to. But worse, I wasn't sure which man I wanted it to belong to. When we returned home, Richard was waiting in the kitchen. He looked at my face, then at Jacob's hand on my back, and he knew. He cornered me later, his voice rough. You were with him. I'm his wife. You're carrying my child. I slapped him. He didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low. Do you feel it yet, Natalie? This pull between us. I hated how true it was. I'm not yours. He smiled, then stopped dreaming about me, and walked away. I stood frozen, the truth pounding in my chest harder than the baby's heartbeat. Because I did dream about him, even when I didn't want to, especially then. Chapter 8. Lies written in flesh. The dreams wouldn't stop. They came in waves, hot, breathless, forbidden. Richard's mouth on my throat, his fingers curling inside me, the weight of his body pinning me to the edge of reason. Every time I woke, guilt slicked my skin like sweat. Jacob lay beside me, peaceful, trusting, too trusting. That morning, he kissed my belly. She kicked, he said, wide-eyed. I nodded, barely breathing. She did. She a daughter. My throat tightened, because now she had shape, weight, a future, and I still didn't know if I'd have to lie to her one day or worse, lie to myself. The doctor suggested a paternity test after birth. Routine. Optional. Jacob agreed easily. Richard, however, why wait? He said, cornering me in the laundry room. You can test now. It's invasive. I'll pay for it, quietly, privately. I don't want to know, I whispered. He stepped closer. Yes, you do. You're just afraid. I'm afraid of losing everything. His hands framed my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. You already did the unforgivable, Natalie. So did I. What's left to lose? I love Jacob, but you want me. My silence was its own confession. That night, Jacob made love to me slowly, his hands worshipping the body I had given to another man. And as his breath caught in my ear, I whispered his name over and over, trying to drown out the one that lingered behind my teeth. Richard. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside, a DNA test form, and a note written in Richard's unmistakable hand. Don't you want to know whose heartbeat you're carrying? Chapter 9. One truth. Two graves. I held the envelope like it might explode in my hands. Truth sealed in paper, a key that could unlock everything or burn it all down. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, eyes rimmed red, stomach round and alive. Did I want to know? Yes. No. Maybe. I took the test in secret. Richard met me in the clinic parking lot, dressed in black, like he was already mourning the outcome. I'm not doing this for you, I said, handing over the sealed form. I'm doing it for her. Our daughter, he said. Not even a question, just certainty. I didn't answer. Days passed. I played house. I baked cookies. I watched Jacob assemble a crib with loving hands and blind faith. And I broke a little more each time he smiled. Then came the letter. I opened it alone. My knees gave out before I finished reading the first line. I cried on the floor of our bedroom, silent sobs that bent me in half. Because the truth wasn't kind. The baby wasn't Jacob's. She was Richard's. That night, I sat across from my husband at dinner. He looked at me like I was the center of his world. I reached for his hand. I have to tell you something, I said. His smile faltered. What is it? But the words never came. Because Richard entered the room, confident, cold, holding his own copy of the results. Jacob stood up. What's going on? Silence stretched. Breathless. Sharp. Richard dropped the envelope on the table, and then everything shattered. Jacob read it slowly, twice, then looked at me like he didn't know who I was. Natalie, I didn't mean to. You slept with him? Tears spilled. It was one time. A mistake. But Jacob wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at his father, and Richard, cruel and calm, simply said, I never stopped wanting her. Jacob swung. Flesh met bone. Blood spattered across the white walls of our perfect kitchen. One truth. Two graves. One of them was our marriage. Chapter 10. Voices and Visions. The house was too quiet now. Jacob was gone. He left that night with nothing but a suitcase and a heartbreak he didn't deserve. No goodbyes. No final screams. Just silence, like the closing of a door that would never open again. Richard stayed. Not in the house, but in the shadows. He sent flowers, letters, promises. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because every time I looked at my daughter's face, I saw both men, Jacob's gentleness and Richard's storm. She was born on a cold morning in March. I named her Ava, and when the nurse handed her to me, I knew the lies were over, but the story would always live inside her. Ava's eyes opened wide, searching. She gripped my finger. I heard a whisper in my head. Not memory, not madness, something else. Truth has a heartbeat too. Richard came to the hospital once, held her for 5 minutes, said nothing, left everything behind in the way his lips brushed her forehead. He looked at me before he walked out. I'll never stop loving her. He didn't say you. He didn't need to. I never saw Jacob again. But he sent a single letter weeks later. No return address. Just one line. She's yours. Raise her better than we raised ourselves. And so I do. I raise her with stories, with truth, with the voice I never used and the vision I never trusted. Because in the end, it was never just about sex or betrayal. It was about the power of choice, mine. The power to own what I did, who I hurt, and who I still had left to save. Ava, my daughter, his child, our reckoning. Some stories aren't meant to be clean. Some endings don't forgive. But in the space between guilt and grace, we find the voice that never lies. The one growing inside us all along. This has been a Voices and Visions exclusive. Stay tuned, stay brave, stay listening.